Welcome to our live stream tonight. This special night. We had this afternoon the new moon for the month of October. So, happy new moon to you. Now, let's think about the next 30 days. What are you going to do? What will this nation do? Well, we're not sure. There are uncertainties that are out there. We're not sure what lurks around the corner. But let's think about from this new moon to the next, what can we do for our health? Now, tonight's topic, something that I just stumbled upon, the Daniel fast. I'm not sure how long it was that Daniel fasted. Now, I don't know if you know who Daniel is, but Daniel was a prophet. Daniel was a prophet in the time that Babylon was the ruling power of the world. Now, how does this relate to biohacking? Is the Daniel fast a biohack? And is it based on the food that was chosen? Well, we have to go to the ancient canonical text and see what is that diet. And then we will look on the internet for those questions that we have on what it is. We'll look at some of the basics. Now, there might not be any significant scientific studies for this diet, at least not yet. But there has been some components of this study that are very similar to the diets that are out there. I don't know how many diets a month there are, but there are numerous. The ones that I am talking about on this channel are, number one, the vegan diet. Number two, the anti-inflammatory diet. Number three would be something that is on the line of the autoimmune protocol diet. Another one can be the Mediterranean diet or the flexitarian diet. Or maybe even those who want to have the elimination diet. Or something very similar to that is the lectin-free diet. All right, so those are different types of diets that I'm sure you've heard of. In the past, you might have heard of some of the more famous ones. I don't want to mention that right now here on this channel because we're not just focused on diet. And we will see that Daniel's fast was more than diet. Now, you can join with this Discord invite if you want to. And on there, you have to use Discord and the channel ID. I can't read it very well right now. And I think it's either a 7375 or a 7376. And then that address on the bottom. You want to join via voice. Why not accept that Oracle challenge? The Oracle challenge would be to come on here and discuss what we're talking about. To think of an alternative opinion. Now you can also join us over here on this side for the chat. Now all the platforms that I'm currently broadcasting on, that includes Facebook Live, YouTube, Periscope, the Twitch broadcast. Now, those who are on the Twitch broadcast, I want to warn you that this is maybe a little bit too what we call spiritual for you. Now, if you think that it is too spiritual for you, think about the games that you're playing. Is that a spiritual experience? I would say it is. It is a spiritual experience. You have your time that you spend in this endeavor, and it's something you find worthy. Now, in this channel, we're speaking to those who are spiritually minded, like those people with devotion. So I challenge you to accept this spiritual, informational live stream if you want. If not, turn the channel. Try not to be a troll. Now, for those who are on another channel called Joshu TV, I will have to once in a while look at that chat because that chat is not available on the screen, at least not yet. And we want to invite all of you who are there on the Biohacker PT. Now let's go to the main event. I'm looking for the main event. Now we are live here. We're not trying to make a perfect stream. We're just seeing if we can get the information across to you in a succinct manner. And hopefully we can achieve that goal today and get into the Daniel fast. Now, I'm going to try to share the screen. Not the squeen, but the screen. Let's see if this won't do. Well, alright. Just wanting that instead. There we go. I think that's going to go now. The Daniel fast. Pulses. What is pulse? Well, if you are into Ayurvedic medicine, you might know what pulse is. Prayer. Something you might not know what it is. But if you are in that foxhole, or you are in that diving plane, or you're over a bridge and you hear and feel the rumble, you'll know what prayer is. Prayer is your lifeline. So think about it as your lifeline if prayer is too spiritual of a word for you. Now we're also turning to a canon, if you know what I mean. An ancient text, manuscript on the prophet Daniel. For he was a prophet. All right. Muhammad was a prophet, was he not? We have many prophets in the past. But this prophet had an insight on world powers to this day. Now, I'm not going to preach on this channel, but you know what I mean, if you know what I mean. So what is the Daniel fast? Could it include food? Yes. There is a certain diet that we can see resulted in the 10 times gain in knowledge and vigor for Daniel and his 3 Hebrew friends. All right. Drink no wine from the table of the king. Prayer, very important, that lifeline. Temperance, what does that mean? Moderation in all things and abstinence in the things that are bad for you. Temperate in the things that are good for you, meaning moderation. How about fellowship? It wasn't just Daniel alone, but was his 3 Hebrew friends. Now, they were all educated in the science and the philosophy and the, I would say, educational data that was available in their time. But they also trained as youth in the Hebrew culture. Now, the way that they were raised, no meat, no drink. If you know what I mean. I mean, they had to eat food. Now, when you think of a fast, what do you think of? Something that you are abstaining from. Not only just food, but how about abstaining from the media? How about fasting from hatred? Those of you who are out there that are protesting, be it for one party or one political view or one worldview or for your race. What about fasting from hate? Now, hate or anger could be a motivational factor. Now, we talk about on this channel about neurotransmitters and how you need to have a certain motivation that can guide you and bring you forward. But in addition to that, you need to have fellowship. You need to have camaraderie, some sort of connection you have with those who are around you, that tribe fellowship. I spoke about that in another broadcast, but that's something that we see in this story. Loyalty. Now, who is this loyalty to? This food was presented to them, and it was blessed in pagan idolatry. Now, those of you who are pagan out there, those who believe in Odin and Thor, and those who believe in the ancient Sumerian text, now this is Sumerian, or in later times, Babylonian. Way back then, the ideas of loyalty. And who is your loyalty to? Now, the Hebrew boys, or the youth, or the young people, their loyalty was to Elohim, Now, what is the ultimate hack? What is that ultimate hack that you can be involved with plugging into? Well, that's for you to determine, and maybe, hopefully we'll have time for that, because we've already gone through 20 minutes and we haven't even scratched the surface. The ultimate hack. Now, for curiosity's sake, let's go ahead and go to the punchline. The Daniel fast, all right? Let's take away the, and let's just go fast. I don't know if that's a bug on my screen. No, it's not. Okay. Oh, yeah, it is on my screen. Okay. So let's look at some images first from Joshu search engine. An excellent search engine for research and those things that are hidden on the web. You can get that on Joshu search. I would encourage you to plug that in to your browser. All right, the Daniel's fast. All right, let's look at some of these pictures. Look at that. Isn't that delightful? I don't know if they had those foods back then, but the Daniel fast. Now, we can look on this screen and we can figure out what is pulse. Now, it's probably anything that is not either fruit, like the banana or the grapefruit or the cucumber or even the avocados, the lettuce. So fruits, vegetables, and nuts would be the walnut, the almond, and the peanut. Okay, so what's left? You have seeds. What would you see as seeds here? Well, I don't have any seeds. Well, maybe the seed oil. All right. Hopefully it is. Well, it's probably olive oil, so it wouldn't be any seed there, but. You have grain. Different types of grains. Now what's left? Looks like beans. Pulse. Legumes. So let's look that up. What is pulse? Because that's what he chose, is pulse. Now, we don't know if we can put that as food. All right, let's see. What are pulses? Pulses.org. Pulses are the edible seeds of plants in the legume family. Okay, so they are the seeds. Pulses grow in pods and come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and colors. Here's another one on the Food Network. I usually don't go to a mainstream site, but if you don't readily recognize the word pulses or know it is the official name of the category of food that includes dry peas, chickpeas, beans, and lentils. Now, if you're vegan, you will know who Dr. Grieger is. He always says peas, chickpeas, beans, and lentils, or something like that. Pulses. So, we need to go to the ancient text now. If you bear with me, let's see if we can do that. There we go, yes. I think that's gonna work. I actually think it's gonna work. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if I can open up the screen for this. Okay, let's go to the book of Daniel. The Old Testament, the old text, the old ancient canon called the Bible, the Holy Bible, for those who are believers. Daniel taken to Babylon. Daniel 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God, and he brought the vessels into the treasure house of his God. And the king spake unto Ashpenazar, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel and the king's seed of the princes. Children in whom was no blemish, but well favored and skillful in all wisdom and cunning and knowledge and understanding science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat, and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end therefore they might stand before the king. Now among these were the children of Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs came, or gave names. For he gave unto Daniel the name Belshazzar, and to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego. Now, these names were these Babylonian gods. He was already trying to mold them so they can be princes back in their land. Daniel's faithfulness. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs, or eunuchs, should I say. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who hath anointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces like worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king. Okay, so that was Melzar. Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, prove Oops. Prove thy servant, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat. There we go. And water to drink. What is pulse? Let's see what the Bible, or this ancient text that we call the Bible, what is pulse? This says something sown, that is, a vegetable as food. Pulse. 2 occurrences in the King James Version. The word is zeroha, or zeraha, or zeraon. All right, so let's go back. Because time is a-moving. Water to drink. So not wine, but water to drink. Then let our countenances be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat, and as thou seest, deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this matter, and proved them 10 days. So it was 3 years now, this is 10 days for this. At the end only of 10 days, their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. Now, if we think about the lectin-free diet, we know that sometimes they eat certain foods that contain lectins, like the certain grains, like whole wheat, but even corn and rice that still has the bran, more or less. Now, there's also the legumes, and these have certain anti-nutrients, but in certain times this is actually good for you. And if we look back, without GMO and without glyphosate and without the depletion of the soils, these foods may have been a different sort at that time. But still, nonetheless, the meat was discarded for the pulse. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse, or vegetable, or legumes. Not just vegetables, but legumes, the seeds that are edible. As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Now, did you get that? Did you get the ultimate hack there? Did you miss it? God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. Remember, we talked about the Daniel fast, and loyalty was one of them. And loyalty to, in this case, the divine, created skill in all learning and wisdom, and even the understanding of all visions and dreams. Talk about a spiritual fast. Daniel and his 3 friends. Now at the end of the days that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar, the king, right? And the king communed with them, and among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. And Daniel continued even unto the first year of King Cyrus. Let's go back to the ultimate hack, remember? And this is a quote. Spirituality and intellect grow together. As in the case of Daniel, in exact proportion as the spiritual character is developed, the intellectual capabilities are increased. So did you catch that? The development of the spiritual is proportional, or it is enhancing the intellectual. All right, I'm not going to preach more than that. Okay? Let's look at the diet. Let's look at the diet and see what is the claim. All right. The Daniel diet. Now, we're going to go to Dr. Axe, I think. I think that's a neutral one. Now, here is one that's even better than that. This is science. PubMed, we've talked about PubMed. Effect of a 21-day Daniel fast on metabolic and cardiovascular disease risk factors in men and women. Now, we probably don't have time to go through all this article, but let's see what we can do in the time that we have. Dietary modifications via caloric restriction is associated with multiple effects related to the improved metabolic and cardiovascular health. However, a mandated reduction in many kilocalories is not well tolerated by many individuals, limiting the long-term application of such a plan. The Daniel fast is a widely utilized fast based on the biblical book of Daniel. It involves a 21-day of ad libitum food intake period, devoid of animal products and preservatives, and inclusive of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds. The purpose of this study was to determine the efficacy of the Daniel fast to improve markers of metabolic and cardiovascular risk. Now, this is published in Lipids in Health and Disease, and the date is going to be important when this was written. It was written in 2010. Okay, so we'll go with that. Now, let's see. Now, there's a lot of statistics in here, and it looks at even things that we've talked about in the past, such as blood counts. Now, okay, so they had 43 subjects. They completed a 21 period of modified food intake in accordance with detailed guidelines provided by the investigators. All right. And the results, there's a lot of numbers there. This says no significant difference was noted in any anthropotic variable. As expected, multiple differences in dietary intake were noted, including a reduction of total kilocalorie intake. Insulin and CRP, C-reactive protein, were lowered to a clinically meaningful, albeit statistical insignificant extent. Going backwards on this. The following were significantly lower following the fast as compared to before the fast: white blood cell count, blood urea nitrogen, blood urea nitrogen creatine, protein, total cholesterol, LDL-C, HDL-C, SBP, systolic blood pressure, and diastolic blood pressure. Conclusions. Now we're going to make this big. Real big. A 21-day period of modified dietary intake in accordance with the Daniel fast is well tolerated by men and women and improves several risk factors for metabolic and cardiovascular disease. Larger scale randomized studies inclusive of a longer time period and possibly a slight modification in food choice in an attempt to maintain HDL cholesterol are needed to extend these findings. Now that's just the abstract alone, looks like. So let's go back to the smaller aspect. All right. This says, our data indicate that exercise-trained and untrained individuals, inclusive of normal weight, overweight, and obese men and women, can benefit from a dietary approach in accordance to the Daniel fast. This is evidenced by reductions in total and LDL cholesterol, systolic and diastolic blood pressure, and trends for reduced insulin, HOMAIR, and C-reactive protein. The diet plan was well tolerated by subjects, with several noting a desire to continue with the plan long-term and appears to provide a default nutrition education. And this is just more suggestions, just to make things, I guess, available for the next studying. Ideas. Follow-up studies should include randomized designs possibly inclusive of small dairy allotments of dairy and lean meat fish in order to boost compliance and to minimize long-term nutrient deficiencies. Such studies would seek to determine the feasibility of both a standard and lightly modified Daniel fast for long-term intake, as well as modifications of this approach for maintenance within a lifestyle eating plan aimed at optimal health, inclusive of food choices and/or nutritional supplements aimed at maintaining HDL-C. Now, you might be wondering, what is the diet? What is the exact actual diet itself? What did they eat? What did they, exactly what did they eat? Well, we don't have time for that. You can look that up on your own, but it says here everything that we talked about. So this is interesting. A Daniel's fast is more stringent in that aside from an exclusion of all animal products, there are no processed foods, white flour products, preservatives, additives, sweeteners, flavorings, caffeine, or alcohol allowed in this plan. Despite this, as individuals traditionally follow this fast for religious purposes in an attempt to become closer to God during a time of extended prayer, anecdotal reports indicate that maintenance of the fast can be achieved by most. All right, so let's go to, let's see if I can find it now. Let's go to Livestream, just for a moment. This is 2020. All right, a lot of good information there. Let's go to level 2. Here's Dr. Axe's version, and this is a little bit more succinct. According to our understanding of the Hebrew definition of pulse that was used for the verse for vegetables, can actually mean range of foods. Here is the Daniel fast food list of what you are allowed to eat, aka your eating plan. Consider it a stricter version of a vegan diet, yet overall plant-based. Beverages. Water only. It must be purified, filtered, spring, or distilled is best. Homemade almond milk, coconut water, coconut kefir, and vegetable juice. Now, I don't know if they had coconut in the desert, but these are modifications. Vegetables should be form the basis of the diet, fresh or cooked, maybe frozen and cooked but not canned. Fruits consumed in moderation, 1 to 3 servings daily. I don't know how they came up with that, but fresh and cooked. Ideally, low glycemic index fruits like stone fruits, apples, berries, cherries, and citrus fruits. May be dried but should not contain sulfites, added oils, or sweeteners. May be frozen but not canned. Whole grains, consume in moderation, ideally sprouted. Brown rice, oats, quinoa, millet, amaranth, buckwheat, barley cooked in water. Beans and legumes consumed in moderation, dried and cooked in water. May be consumed from can as long as no salt or other additives are contained and the only ingredients are legumes and beans and water. And then nuts and seeds sprouted are best. Raw, sprouted, or dry roasted with no salt added. So there's a list. Foods to avoid. Oh, can't have coffee. So much for our butter coffee. Those are the ones to take. Those are the ones to avoid. Now, how does this affect pain? Now, if we went back to the original article on the PubMed, it did say that it decreased something here. It was curious. I think it's just more the functional aspects here. So let's look at the search. No match for pain, but we did use the let's go for this. Sometimes it takes physical pain to open our eyes to the spiritual and emotional sufferings of others. Interesting. So, this one here, these are some more anecdotal. Another anecdotal. My back has been in terrible pain for longer than I can remember. Food for nerve pain relief. All right, so we'll look at that in more detail at another broadcast. Today was just the spiritual aspect of how we can look at things now. Again, in review, The Daniel fast, pulses, and prayer. The Daniel fast included changes in food, drink, and involving prayer, temperance, fellowship, and loyalty. The ultimate hack is plugging in to the spiritual connection in order to gain intellect, to be able to understand visions and dreams, to be wiser, and to be more in tune than those who might have a different lifestyle. So, a little change to the title. Nonetheless, we thank you for coming and joining us in our broadcast. It's late, and I bid you this weekend and this next new moon cycle to get in touch with that spiritual connection, in tune with your food, drink, prayer life, your fellowship and loyalty and temperance, with moderation for things that are good and abstinence for things that are bad. And may you have a blessed next 30 days towards better health. Join us again next time.